Well, since you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unfinished Business. Thank you for having us. Thanks for tuning in once again. I know it's been a little minute, but we bite now.
Back. Back and better.
Back and better. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but you'll see we kind of got a little new setup. So tell me what you think. Before we get started, for those that are tuning in on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe because it really, really helps us. And so I myself, if you haven't remembered, I'm Tia.
Danielle, whichever you prefer.
And so, Danny, we got a lot to talk about today.
We have a lot, yeah.
Y'all, it's been a long time, so we are going to be talking about the things that have been most recent and things like that. And I think the kind of trending topic right now is the NFL and Calvin Ridley. And so, for those that may not know what happened, right? Calvin Ridley was away from the Atlanta Falcons for mental health reasons. And while he was away, he made a few bets on games that included the Falcons and games that didn't include the Falcons as well. And so they came down pretty hard on him for that. And so he got suspended for at least the 2022 season. And I think he originally came out and said, well, I only betted $1,500 or something like that. But I actually just read an article where it said he actually betted more than he said, and it was a whopping $3,900. And so I guess with that, right, what do you kind of think about that stance, right, that, you know, how hard they're coming down on him in the NFL? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that sports betting in general has been a lot more normalized and a lot more regulated, especially lately. Of course, Vegas has always been home for sports betting, but, you know, with the recent websites and apps now that you can participate in parlays and things like that, to me, I think it's extremely harsh. I think it's a very harsh punishment, especially when, I'm going to say it, when you think of past cases like Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson and, you know, all of those like really polarizing cases of not sports betting, but other, you know, violations, breaking team rules, even Des Bryant years ago, you know, when he had his domestic issues, and those guys were only suspended for 3 games.
Yeah.
And so for something like sports betting, I mean, I think some people would say it's more of like a moral thing, you know, more of a moral code because he was betting on his team and he wasn't there and he was away for mental health reasons. But I think it's questionable regardless, especially, like I said, with how regulated sports betting is. So, yeah, what do you think?
You honestly bring up a good point, right, where you're talking about, okay, different crimes, and let's not even say crimes, but different infractions, right, that you may have in the NFL.
Right.
And so you have domestic abuse, right, and then you have betting or gambling. One of them, you know, in most people's opinion, may be worse than the other.
Right.
And I would have to think that when the majority of people would say that domestic abuse is a lot worse than gambling on the game. And so when you look at the punishments and you see the varying differences, it makes you scratch your head a little bit like, okay, so for betting, right, we're in 2022. You've even talked about the different, you know, apps and platforms that have made gambling just super easy today, right? And the NFL has gotten in a lot of trouble, right? Because they're like, hey, you guys need to get with the times.
Yeah.
Right? We're not in the 80s. We're not in the 90s anymore. Things have kind of changed. And so as a league, you kind of have to adjust to what's going on right now. And so the NFL makes you scratch your head all the time. But when you look at the different punishments for different infractions, you're like, that doesn't make sense. A whole season for $4,000 on betting, but then for domestic abuse, it's much less than that. And so maybe now today, right, I will be devil's advocate, maybe now today, if there was a domestic abuse case to come up, it would be a lot harsher. I forget his name. I think his name was like Chad.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
From the Seahawks. Well, he nearly killed the girl, right? And he actually got charged with those crimes at least. And so I don't think he's a part of any team right now.
Right.
But that makes a lot of sense. But just for some of those other situations, just kind of like, you know, we're talking about gambling. It's funny because I was looking at kind of like all of the big guys talk about it. So, you know, Jay Williams and all those guys. And, you know, one of them was kind of saying like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. And others were saying, it's a huge deal. And it's actually just kind of ruining the game. Like, it's really, really bad for the sport. And so to the ones that are saying, like, oh, my gosh, this is a huge issue. You shouldn't be doing that. And it just really kind of, like, demoralizes the game. Like, what do you say to those people?
I think people overreact regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's a victimless crime. No one is there. He's not taking food out of his family's mouths by that. He's plentiful when it comes to money. And so betting his own money, it's victimless. No one's being affected by that. People are extremely affected by domestic abuse, and so it's like I don't know. And maybe that comparison. I haven't even seen it on The Jump and all those shows, but I would say, me personally, that I think it's extreme, and it is extreme compared to other crimes that have had victims, or like you said, not say crimes, but other situations where people are really affected. And then two, I think about it in a way where that could trickle down. You could think of the past victims of players who didn't really receive a grave punishment.
Yep.
And they look at Calvin Ridley like, wow, well, the NFL really cares about sports betting, but they don't really care about domestic abuse, So
exactly.
It could trickle down to that. I'm not sure if it will, but I could see it happening. And so yeah.
So I think, it's unfortunate for Calvin Ridley, because I think it just kind of came at a time where it's like, we don't want to accept this, so now we're going to make an example.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It definitely was that.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think the NFL maybe was surprised about was the mixed reactions that they got to that punishment.
Yeah.
Where maybe they thought people were going to be like, yep, that's the exact right thing to do.
Right.
But a lot of people were like, come on, like a whole season, that's a little ridiculous. So it kind of makes me think, like, moving forward, right? How are they going to approach it? Are they going to approach it the same exact way, or maybe will they tailor it back a little bit because of some of the backlash that they got in the mixed reactions? So that's something I think to kind of like look forward to.
Definitely keep an eye on, because
it's not the first time that it's happened,
right?
And it likely isn't the last. I'm sure that it's actually going on probably right now as we speak, like during the seasons. They probably make bets all the time. I think it's kind of harmless, especially if they're not betting on their team. I think I really don't see the harm in betting on other teams while you're playing, but that's just me.
I agree. And of course, Twitter is going to make a joke out of everything. And so it was, someone was like, Calvin Ridley's username must have been Calvin Ridley from the Falcons, because it was too quick how they, found him and found his account. And like you said, I believe that it happens a lot. It's just a lot more hush-hush. You can get away with it. And it's not out in the open. So. And
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he self-reported it.
Did he?
Yeah. So that's what I heard. I think he self-reported it and things of that sort. And then they kind of did the investigation to make sure, right, okay, hey, was there any inside information? So yeah, he was away from the team, but had he been in contact with coaches, had he been in contact with players,
right,
to maybe have known the game plan? And so they found that there was no insider information. So it was simply just him, I guess, kind of passing time,
exactly.
Nobody knew what he was doing on the Falcons, and that's just kind of how it played out. So
right.
Yep. So we won't see Calvin Ridley for the whole 2022 season. Obviously, maybe he'll try to appeal it, or at least at the end of 2022, he's hoping to come back in 2023. So something to look out for. We probably are going to forget about it by next week. But kind of crazy, right?
Definitely.
That's kind of how we open up things. But along with the NFL, right, we got other big news. Our guy, Russell Wilson.
Yep.
He was traded from the Seahawks to the Denver Broncos, which, some are saying like this is probably one of the biggest trades that has kind of happened in the last decade. Like, not the biggest, but one of the biggest, because Russell Wilson is obviously a future Hall of Famer. So now that he's on the Denver Broncos, right, how do you kind of see that playing out? And, I guess you can even go back into what maybe led to that from your point of view.
Well, I think that automatically makes them a contender in the playoffs. I think Russell Wilson is, like you said, a future Hall of Famer. He's already a Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl champion. And that was a blockbuster trade for the NFL. We're used to seeing things like that in the NBA. And so
now,
now for sure. But in the NFL, it's a lot, more rare. And so to see that happen, I think it was apparent that he wanted to get out of Seattle and that he wanted to win another championship. And so it was just a matter of which team was going to make that fit and make that work for him. And I know the Seahawks got Drew Lock, and they got a tight end, I believe.
Yep. They got Drew Lock, they got Noah Shelby, and then where is it? Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris.
Okay.
That's who they got.
Right. And the Broncos only received Russell Wilson in a fourth-round pick.
Yep.
And so, I don't know. I mean, the Seahawks, DK, I feel bad for him. You know, I don't know what those routes are about to look like now. But, I mean, the Broncos, I like I said, I do think that automatically makes them a contender. I think that they were already half decent this past season. They just, needed that piece, needed
a quarterback,
for sure.
And I think, so when I heard the news that Russell Wilson got traded, I actually was kind of shocked, right? Because we go back, right, to 2019. I think Russell Wilson, he had just signed the 4-year contract with the Seahawks. And I don't know if you remember, but that's when he was saying, like, I look at all the big guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and all of those guys. For the most part, they were usually with one team throughout their entire careers.
Right.
And so he even mentioned, he's like, I want to be like that. I don't want to be the player that makes their legacy is based on all of these different teams that they play for. I want to be a Seahawk for life. And so if you're listening to that speech, there was probably no doubt in anyone's minds that Russell Wilson would have been a Seahawk until the day that he retired. And so when I saw that he was traded, I was shocked. And so then, I started canvassing through Twitter and things like that, and I see some of the things that people were saying. And so some of the things that I saw and heard were that he did want out. What was going on, allegedly, right, based on camps, different things that camps have said, and just some of the people, the media around it have heard, is that there was a pretty contentious relationship between him and head coach Pete Carroll, where, we know what Russell is capable of. He has an arm, sometimes he can get out of pocket. He's very scrappy, things of that sort. But his camp felt like Pete Carroll was sticking to his guns of winning by a run game and defense. And so sometimes there was kind of like a little back and forth because Russell Wilson was like, I want to air it out more,
And he can, so he should be able to.
Exactly. And I have the ability to, but if we're going to keep sticking to run, whether it works or not, it's like, how can I, bring my best self and things of that sort. Not only that, but Pete Carroll, I think he was kind of more of a run game-minded coach, because it was one game where he even said in one of the post-media pressers, like, I think Russ kind of put us in a bad spot by airing out the ball. I wish he would have made better decisions or something like that. And Russell Wilson, in turn, he took that on the chest, but Russell Wilson has also made comments like, hey, I think we didn't get out of the run game fast enough and make an adjustment. Yeah. So you got these years of kind of like going back and forth. Obviously, they think differently, right? And that's okay. But I don't think that they can just come to the compromise, right? And then I think the last cherry on top was that this last season, maybe the past 2 seasons, Russell Wilson hasn't felt protected in the pocket. And I think he's even like said, I wish I had more say in personnel matters, right? As far as like, you look at LeBron James, right? LeBron James is a Hall of Famer, and we talk about LeBron a lot on this show. But LeBron is also allowed to kind of pick the pieces to his puzzle. Right. He's kind of earned that right. He's earned that respect. And so Russell Wilson's kind of thinking the same way, like, hey, I'm the quarterback of this team. I brought us to 2 Super Bowls. We won one of those. I was your quarterback, who's pretty much the leader, the captain of the team. And, I should have some say in who we're bringing in and, who's protecting me and things of that sort. And so I felt like, at least from what I saw, it seems like that he was kind of upset about that a little bit, that he wasn't having a little bit more power.
Right. And I think anytime that coach and player dynamic isn't there, especially like in the media, whether it's passive aggressive or not, of course, there are so many journalists and so many people that are going to eat at that and uncover that and even try to get that out of you even more so in the media. And so I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he's getting another opportunity. And then, like you said, he looks to those older quarterbacks, those greats, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady left the Patriots and went to Tampa Bay and won a Super Bowl. Peyton Manning left the Colts and went to the Denver, the Broncos, same place that Russell is in now, and won a Super Bowl. And so, I could see him chasing that and wanting to do that. And I hope he gets there. I'm always behind the black quarterback, always at the end of the day. Of course, he's one of the greats in the league. So, definitely rooting for him in Denver.
No, for sure. And I think, one other point that I wanted to make, right, with just that relationship that I saw mentioned was, Russell Wilson, sometimes in the offseason, he flirts the idea of trying to play baseball. And so after some digging of what I saw, I think the Seahawks were a little bit nervous about that because it's like, hey, are you actually committed to us? Are you actually committed to football? Are you actually committed to the NFL? And so based on my little research, he had a similar problem at North Carolina State before he transferred to Wisconsin. And so, he played at North Carolina State, and basically the thing was he maybe had one more year left, and they had a new up-and-coming quarterback that they kind of wanted to put their eggs into that basket because Russell Wilson was also trying to play baseball, and him and his coach couldn't see eye to eye because his coach is like, sometimes you're gone for extended periods of time during the baseball season. We know you want to play two sports, but when you get to college, it's very difficult, I think, to play two sports. And a lot of coaches don't want to share their players in the first place, especially depending on what level you're at. Division I, North Carolina State is a Division I school. IU, you don't see that happen often where kids are able to play two sports. And so his coach kind of questioned his commitment to football there as well. And that's why he basically kind of asked him, I think you should probably find a new team because we're going to go in this direction. And so that's how he ended up at Wisconsin, which with Russell Wilson, he has found, the situation that he's been in, how they say it's not always greener on the other side.
Right.
For him, it was greener because he had a lot of success at Wisconsin, and it's probably the reason why he's in the NFL today.
Definitely.
And so it'll be interesting, right? Obviously, it seems like he has a passion for baseball, but how he gets along with the Broncos, coaching staff, the players, and things like that, and if they'll allow Russell to be him, whether that's airing the ball out when he sees fit, kind of taking risks and chances, and then also in the off season flirting around with the idea of playing baseball as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Yep. So that's Russell Wilson. I think we talk about the trade, right? And just to give you guys some specifics, the Seahawks gave up, or what the Seahawks got, they got Drew Lock, they got Noah Fant, they got Shelby Harris, they got a 2022 first round pick, a 2023 first round pick, a 2022 second round pick, and a 2022 fifth round pick. And in return, the Denver Broncos got Russell Wilson, obviously, and a 2022 fourth round pick, as you had mentioned earlier. And so there's been debate, right, about who won in that trade, whether it was, did the Denver Broncos give up too much? Did the Seahawks win or lose in that one? And so I kind of want to see, what do you think about that? Because, right, if you go by sheer numbers, the Seahawks did get a lot.
Right.
For Russell Wilson. So
yeah, and Russell Wilson is worth a lot, and that's why that deal was made, because they knew giving up our Super Bowl MVP quarterback, you can't just give us a pick or two. It had to take all of that. However, I think that this next season, and maybe even the season after that, we'll be able to see who won that trade. Of course, people like to speculate when the trade first happens. Same thing in the NBA with the Nets and with the Sixers. People were saying the Sixers won that trade. Well, we'll get there. We'll get to that part.
It don't look like it.
Right. Well, we're going to get to that point. But I'm saying that to say that a lot of the times, people speculate in the beginning, but then when championships happen, when playoff runs happen, that is when, you can actually tell who wins a trade. And so, I don't know. I think when the Broncos make a playoff run and possibly make it to the Super Bowl and Russell is holding up a ring and on camera talking about he going to Disneyland, that's when we'll see who won the trade. So
exactly. Yeah. And, I want him to have success. I think he will have success.
Definitely.
He seems like a great guy on and off the field.
He does.
I think sometimes people, so I'll speculate, I think the Broncos did win that trade simply because in football, it's kind of like this, right? You got 11 players that are on the field, and by far the quarterback is the most important. If you got a mid-level quarterback, because there's not a lot of great quarterbacks in the league as it stands today.
Not anymore.
If you really think about it, a lot of them are very much average. So being able to get a future Hall of Famer like Russell Wilson, you can't really kind of like undermine that, because a football team does not go if they don't have a decent quarterback. Like, you probably can make it a good portion of the way through the season. You probably can even make it to the playoffs. But it becomes very apparent sometimes, maybe not this year, right? Because you got like people like Jimmy G having success, and I think he's an average. I wouldn't put him on the same level as Russell Wilson.
Not
but
a chance.
I think you can only get so far, right? Where we're only having an average quarterback, and then to be able to add a piece like Russell Wilson, it's just kind of like, oh wow, like that would get any team excited. He's already making the right moves. They said that he FaceTimed his entire offensive line.
Big.
And so,
very big.
Exactly. It's like he just gets it. He does all of the right things, like where it's like this guy knows what he's doing. You know, he's getting the guys that are going to be protecting him the most behind him already, and starting to build that rapport and building that relationship. And so, you know, when you see things like that, if I'm a fan, from a Denver Broncos perspective, I'm like really excited about that and seeing what they're going to do.
I agree. And like you said, I look at quarterbacks like, if I were to say, you know, tiers in the NFL, I would definitely put Jimmy G, Matt Stafford, even though he just went and won the Super Bowl. I would put them in the tier below Russell Wilson. And even in the tier above Russell Wilson, you know, I might put Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, even though now he's retired, of course.
And that's it.
Literally, you know, I would even, a lot of people might disagree, but I would even put Pat Mahomes and Russell Wilson, like, they're in the same tier to me, fair. You know, and like you said, the Chiefs, they're excited. They got their guy. I would agree that the Broncos and Russell Wilson definitely got their guy that you have to be confident in taking you to the Super Bowl for sure.
And the Broncos had no choice either to draft a quarterback. Not draft, but get a good, solid quarterback. Because Russell Wilson is actually their 12th quarterback since Peyton Manning retired in 2016.
That is a hell of a stat, because wow, are you serious?
Yeah, so obviously injuries and things like that.
Yeah, but that's insane.
So it took them 11 quarterbacks before him, and they're hoping to have got it right this time. I think, you know, they'll have good success. The first year, that's with any big changes, right? It may take a little time. So obviously you don't want to freak out, which is what most people do.
Yeah, but with a revolving door of quarterbacks like that, it's so hard to be consistent with an offensive line, with an offense. Exactly. Having your defense be motivated that their offense is going to come on the field and score. You know, that's a lot of that plays into it. So definitely getting some foundation and some stability in Russell Wilson will be good for them.
For sure. So we talked about Russell Wilson. There's another famous, great other Russell over in the NBA. And so this has been a super hot topic, Danny. Russell Westbrook and the Lakers. I think going into the season, a lot of people thought, oh, wow, the Lakers are going to win the championship. They got LeBron James. They got Anthony Davis. Now they added Westbrook, who kind of brings that fire and things of that sort. There's no way that they're not going to win a championship. And for those that have been watching, it's been actually the exact opposite. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. And the person that's been taking pretty much all the heat for that is Russell Westbrook. And so, you know, recently, and that's been throughout his whole career, he's gotten a lot of slack. Even when it's his fault and also when it's not his fault.
Right.
But I think this year it's been just kind of crazy because it's his own fan base now that's just like dragging him through the mud. And I think it's starting to finally get to him a little bit. It's demoralizing, it's disheartening. And, you know, he addressed the media basically saying, you know, the Westbrook, which is what they've nicknamed him, comments and things like that. If he's hearing it, he's going to address it every single time. And so, that's a lot to unpack, right? You're going to unpack the Lakers. You know, what can you really say about that situation with Russell Westbrook and the Lakers?
I can say that anytime there are, you know, threats being made and, you know, his family is involved and you get to a much higher scope, bigger than basketball. It's basketball's not even a question at that point. Now you're crossing the line, to me, and to a lot of people would agree. Do I believe that Russell Westbrook deserves criticism for how he has performed this season? Without a doubt, absolutely. I think it is pitiful how he's been playing this season. And not only in comparison to what we know he can do, but to the standards of an NBA player, right?
Right.
to the standards of a college basketball player. I mean, the shots that he's taken and have missed terribly, and the missed layups and the blatant turnovers, they're ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Okay. However, talking about his family, the Westbrook nickname and all of that, it is a bit much. I will say that, and I agree to that fact. But the criticism is not unwarranted by any means. And am I going to say that the entire Lakers organization is falling, crumbling to the floor because of Russell Westbrook? Absolutely not. I think Anthony Davis can't stay healthy, and I think that's a huge part of it. I think that there are no other pieces around them. Carmelo, he needs to be a role player, and he's not even a role player at this point. He's having to step up and get 20 a game for them to compete. LeBron's having to put up 50 pieces for them to compete, and he's 37. He's not even 36 anymore. He's 37, and so it is ridiculous. The Lakers this season, like you said, they're not even playoff contention right now, and a lot of people were calling LeBron Thanos at the beginning of the season because they're like, dang, you got Melo, you got AD, you got Russ. But looking back, and we talked about trades, that a lot of those players that they let go, Caruso, Kuzma, Ingram.
Yep.
I love Brandon Ingram.
Yep.
And he's a bucket. And Lonzo, it's a lot of those players that they let go. Of course, they won the championship after that season, and so people might not be looking back towards that trade, but I am, because you look at the development that those players are receiving on other teams and how well they're doing on other teams. You think to, what if they were still on the Lakers? Like, what if those pieces were still there? And so, obviously, I have a lot to say about this, but I with the Russell Westbrook point, I will say that, like I said, I don't think the criticism is unwarranted. However, I do think it's a bit out of control when you start to mention his family, make threats, and things like that. So, what do you think?
All right, so, in order for me to answer that question, I'm gonna have to go back a little bit, right?
Right.
To the beginning of the Lakers season, and so, I'm going to preface this. Russell Westbrook is my favorite player. I like the way he plays. I like the intensity he brings to the game. So if I sound a little bit biased, maybe I am. But I'm going to go back to the beginning of the season when they were coming in with all of the hype. And then they didn't live up to the hype. From the very beginning, a lot of people were upset that Russell Westbrook, that the Lakers brought on Russell Westbrook. Mm-hmm. And anytime something went wrong, even when it was not his fault, he was faulted. Before Anthony Davis got injured, right?
The first time.
I don't even know how many times it's been, right? Mm-hmm. Anthony Davis has been playing soft the entire season. And nobody is talking about that. I think the first person that mentioned that was Charles Barkley. But before he even mentioned it, I was thinking to myself, like, wow, nobody's going to talk about how Anthony Davis is playing lackadaisical dang near every single game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's supposed to be in his prime.
Yeah.
He's the only player right now that's actually supposed to be in his prime. So I'm watching a lot of Lakers games. They're nationally televised. Westbrook, my favorite player. So I'm tuned in and I'm watching and I'm like, what type of shit is this that he can come in here?
Yeah.
He can half-ass it, and no one is saying anything about Anthony Davis because Westbrook is simply an easy target, and he's always been an easy target. Just go back, just look at the years he's been in the league. He's always been an easy target. So that's where the Lakers' problem started, if you ask me. It started with Anthony Davis before he got hurt, right? He gets hurt. Now they're having to figure things out. I think this season, Anthony Davis has missed 28 games, and LeBron himself has missed 18. So they haven't been at full health. Still not an excuse. Yes, Russell Westbrook is playing terribly. But if I had to put my feet in his shoes, right, as a player that's constantly getting blamed, something that was super hyped up is not living to the hype, I can only imagine what he's kind of going through, because he's probably looking at me too like, dang, they sit here talking about me, but AD over here ain't doing nothing. He ain't playing no defense. He ain't rebounding. He's simply not playing hard, right? So you look to your right and you see that. Then you see all these other players, which you maybe don't have much expectations of them, right? But you kind of see those guys. Taylor Horton-Tucker was injured for like a good first part of the season.
He had a lot of expectations on him early
right?
too, I think.
Kendrick Nunn was hurt. I think he's still hurt. I haven't seen him on the floor yet. Trevor Ariza was hurt for a good part of the first half of the season. Who else? I think Malik Monk has been healthy. So he's been like the only guy. And so really it's just kind of been disastrous. But I just think it was Anthony Davis not playing hard, right? Secondly, I think the Lakers as a team, they don't play defense. And that's their problem. You know, you could easily pin it on one player. Completely agree. And if you want to blame it on Westbrook, like you said, it's not unwarranted. You know, he's been playing terrible. The decisions that he's been taking on his shots and things like that. Just turning the ball up. You're right. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
Right.
That's very fair. I completely agree. But I don't think it's all on him. You know, it takes 5 players to win and things like that. Like even LeBron, right? You can even go back to the coaching. Are they even being coached? Because a lot of times it looked like LeBron get the ball and everybody just watch.
And that was a big point I was going to make or even ask you about. How much of it do you think is coaching?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say because I think that Frank Vogel's name has been brought up in discussions of, well, is it the coach? You know, is this his last ride? You know, he had, we've seen it before where coaches have won an NBA championship. The next season they flop and then the next season they're gone.
Right.
And so, especially when they have such a bad fall off, when moves are being made, trades are happening, contracts are being signed, you know, a lot of pieces are being moved around for another championship season. There were so many expectations on Russ and Melo and Monk and THT, all of them, and it's just falling flat right now.
Right.
And so how much of that do you think is coaching?
I think a good portion of it is coaching too. If I had to say, you know, coaching, playing, and just the actual players, right, that they have, like I think they have the pieces, right? So that's the way they're playing, right? How hard they're playing. I think that's 33% of it.
Yeah.
I think the other 33% is injuries and just not being able to, like, the team chemistry and things of that sort.
Right.
And then the last third of that is the coaching because, you know, and maybe I'll get a lot of backlash for this, but I feel like a good portion of coaches in the NBA are not good coaches.
I think you read my mind because I was literally going to say in the NBA period, like how much, I mean, I'm not saying that an NBA coach is just a placeholder. I'm not saying that.
Yep.
But these guys are uber talented. Like they really don't need you to tell them to do much. And a lot of it is come off a screen or come off a curl and hoop.
No, for real. A lot of these coaches in the NBA, not saying they don't have the talent, but they don't have to do anything. And when it comes time for them actually having to do something, they sit here looking like, oh, it's his fault.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to bench him to act like I'm doing something because then if I bench him, what you got to going to talk about is, oh, this player got benched and I'm just trying to make adjustments and things of that sort. But a lot of these coaches don't really know how to coach these guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, half the time, you know, you look at the huddles, a lot of them don't even be paying attention to the coach. Oh. You know what I'm saying? So I think this year, Frank Vogel has actually had to coach. And now that he's actually had to coach, you really see the real him. Yeah. You know, it's hard to coach a team with LeBron on it because
he's a coach.
Exactly.
He's a player coach for sure.
Exactly. And you can't really blame him, right? But it's like, how are you a coach for the best player in the league and maybe the best player out of all of basketball over the years, right?
Right.
And so I think it's a little bit of that, right? He don't want to step on LeBron's toes, but it's also like, well, I got to figure something out because now he on a hot seat too, where people are looking at him too, like, well, what are you doing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we know Russ playing terrible, you know, but what are you doing?
And I've even seen a lot of questions about Russ, his rotation, him coming off
role.
The bench, yeah, him starting, what he needs from him, and Frank Vogel said he thinks that he gets more out of Russ in the lineup versus coming off the bench, right? Mm-hmm. Questionable. You know, not just for Russ, but just for, you know, any coach. That decision has to be made. And when you make it, you stand on it. Exactly. That's when the organization, the owners, they start to question. And we know Miss Jeannie Buss, you know, her dad built the Lakers, built them up. And so, you know, the Lakers are, I feel like, the most hated and the most loved organization in all of sports.
Depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. And so when you think about the value that they hold and how many championships they have, you have somebody like Magic Johnson, who won so many championships, is such a spokesperson for the Lakers. He has come out and very publicly criticized Russell and his performance. And he called him Russell Westbrook on TV. Yep. That man said it on television. Russell Westbrook. And whether he meant to or not, he did that, and that's what it was. And so I think, like I said, when you have so many different eyes on you and there's so much pressure, it's not just Russ. It's not. And I do hate that he's, you know, getting that. And I want to ask you, too, how much do you think his mental is affected by this? And how much do you think mental health and all of that plays a part in his performance and in how he's reacting to all of this criticism?
Yeah, I think at a certain point, right, if he's anything like me, and I haven't played professionally in the NBA or anything like that, but if this is my job and no matter what I do, good or bad, I'm not getting credit for it, pretty soon, even if you're not doing it purposely, you like, well, damned if I do, damned if I don't.
You're going to stop caring.
Yeah, you're going to stop caring. And you're also going to be like, well, shoot, I'm getting blamed for all this. And it is unfair. You know, yeah, criticism is warranted. I have no problem with that. You know, Magic Johnson is coming out saying, you need to stop worrying about this and just focus on your play. I completely agree with him because although that may piss you off and things like that, you aren't playing well. And you have to come out and say that, like, you know, this season I have not been my best. And that's okay.
Yep. It is okay.
It is okay to say that.
Yeah. A lot of guys have slumps. That happens.
Exactly. And I wouldn't even necessarily call it a slump. I think it's more so just the team environment that he's on. He's not used to being on a team like this. And I'm actually not surprised that something like this has happened. You want to know why? Because it's never been in Russ's character to try to go and be with the team that had all the heavy hitters. Prior to this season, I would have never expected Russ to do this, right? To go play on a team with LeBron and Anthony Davis. He was always kind of like the dark horse, like, you know, I'm going to get my team to the playoffs that you guys don't even, aren't even projecting to be in the playoffs. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm going to go get triple doubles to show you guys, like, yeah, okay, maybe we don't win a championship, but this is what I can do. So he went from having that attitude to doing what everybody else in the league was doing, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's him. Right. It's never been him. So that was shocking already. And then now you went there, and maybe you did want to play for the Lakers simply because you grew up in LA. You know, he shows a lot of love to LA. He does a lot for his community and things like that. So maybe that was a dream. But now your dream has turned into a nightmare because the fans, it's like they hate him. Yeah. You know, to be honest, like every time I'm on Twitter, it's always something bad about Russell Westbrook. If you don't watch the game, you would think that Russell Westbrook was the reason that they lost.
Every single time. Every single time. Yeah.
And so mentally, I do think that, you know, I would be very pissed off. It would be hard for me to kind of get up every day. And people always say this, well, he's getting paid $40 million. Yeah. So you telling me in the society that we talk about with having mental health and things like that, that just because he's getting paid $40 million, that his mental is supposed to be worth $40 million too? No. When he's still a human being?
Yeah. Those people don't get it. They never will. Ever. Those are the same people that say those are the same people that say college athletes, well, you're getting your school paid for, so what are you complaining about?
Or no, those are actually the same people that say, well, I'm paying for your college education. Yeah. So
tripping.
Exactly. And so, especially when you say those types of arguments, like, okay, well, he's getting paid this much money, so he should be able to deal with that. Yeah, criticism you can deal with, but when it starts, like, death threats, come on now.
That's absurd.
He's from the hood.
Yeah.
If somebody's sending a death threat his way, it's more than, he don't want to go to the media about that. He want to know who said it so he can face him face to face.
He's stepping, for sure.
You know what I mean? So, it's just a lot that goes into it. Russ, he hasn't been playing well. I think he knows that. I think he's kind of over it, to be honest. Like, as they kind of see that the playoffs are getting further and further away, it's just kind of like, I'm ready for the season to be over. And we've been there.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
You know how that is.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm definitely interested to see what happens following this season as far as, you know, players getting released, free agency, what happens with that. And, you know, a lot of people like to make jokes. Like we said, Twitter's a joke fest, and that's fine. You know, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to be playing on the Shanghai Sharks next year, him and AD, because AD can't stay healthy. What do you project happening following this season with Russell Westbrook in his career? Do you think that he'll retire? Do you think that he'll, you know, seek opportunities on another team? What do you see happening?
I definitely don't think he'll retire. You know, maybe it's getting to him a little bit, but I think he's a tough guy. I definitely think he wants out of the Lakers because, you know, some would say it's not even worth it. The money is not even worth it to deal with all of the extra baggage that's been coming his way. Like, it's not even just been about playing basketball. Like, now you're dealing with fans, they calling you names and stuff like that. Like, a lot of times, certain situations just aren't worth it. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that he's going to want to be traded. Now, what's going to be interesting is how the league is going to perceive him after this season.
That's a big part. Who's going to want him?
Exactly. Because I think most of the players around know his game and know what he can do. But when you're looking at general managers and coaches, it's really going to be how do they view Russell Westbrook after this season. Yeah. His stock definitely went down. And the Lakers, I think what they're going to be tasked with is teams are going to be lowballing the shit out of them.
True.
And they're going to reference this season like, you know, you're wanting all these picks and wanting all these players, but look at what this guy didn't produce.
Look at the material.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think he's gonna want out. How easy of a trade? I don't know. I think if they're using that right to just try to lowball, it's probably gonna be hard for the Lakers to pitch him to other teams because teams are gonna lowball, and it really just depends on how badly do the Lakers want to make a trade,
right?
And things of that sort. But honestly, I think he'll get traded. And he'll go on to another team where he can kind of be him because he hasn't played his game this whole season, and he's going to go back to having success and things like that.
Let me ask you this. Can you think of a team right now that he would fit a lot better on and that he would have success with, or even another superstar that he would pair well with right now?
That's a tough question. I got to think about that a little bit.
I knew it was a tough one. I knew it when I asked you.
Do you have a team in mind?
No, because as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, I really can't.
But it's hard, though, because if you say LeBron James, right, can you see a team that he's going to do well on? I think regardless of what team he goes to, he's going to do well. But as far as pairing with other people, it's hard to pair LeBron with somebody.
True.
Just because of the type of player that he is. So I think sometimes, like KD and Kyrie, that's a good pairing because they're different positions.
Yeah.
And things of that sort. You know what I mean?
Even though they're both very ball dominant, it's like they're ball dominant in other ways. Like KD doesn't need 15 dribbles to get a bucket. Kyrie might, but he's still going to get there.
Exactly.
Right. So, I don't know. You know, I think about Russ on, you know, the teams that aren't doing very well, you know, maybe like the Spurs or Orlando even, you know, like just a lot of those.
But they even got guards there. He has to go to a team that doesn't already have like a ball-heavy point guard. Because the Lakers didn't have one, but LeBron is the point guard. Mm-hmm. You know, whether you like it or not, he's bringing the ball up a lot.
Right.
So it's really going to be those teams, and, you know, I'm having trouble thinking of it now, but teams that don't already have a strong point guard, you know, for the most part, where it's just kind of like, that's where I think he has the most success. Not to just do whatever he wants, but so that he's kind of like the leader, because I do think he's a good leader. You know, people say he's a good teammate and things of that sort, but right now I can't envision it. But once the teams start coming up, right, in the rumors, I think I'll be able to say, okay, out of these 3 or 4 teams, this is where I could see him have the most success. So.
Definitely.
But you can't think of no teams?
I mean, I'm telling you, I think of a lot of teams, but like you said, there are so many guards. You know, you could even put him on a team where he would have to take a back seat. You know, maybe the Celtics, where he could.
The Celtics did come to mind, but they share the ball. They don't have like a main point guard or something like that.
Or like I said, the Spurs put him in a system to where
he can't do systems.
See?
I don't think. You know,
I agree.
With Popovich,
I almost agree.
He can't do systems.
Yeah.
Like Warriors, I could never see him go through all those screens. Mm-hmm. So teams with systems.
Yeah. No teams with systems.
He definitely can't do that. I think the Raptors are doing well. The Pistons.
Yeah. There's nobody up there. I mean, Cade, but
yeah,
I could maybe see that happening. I think, you know, when you get to this point in your career at the NBA, and I'm obviously
Timberwolves.
Yeah, maybe him and Anthony Edwards.
Do you think D'Angelo Russell would have to move around though for that to happen?
No, I think at this point after this season, Russ would be coming off the bench on any team he played for, depending on what they already have. He would.
I don't agree with that.
Really?
He's had a terrible season.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guards, like if we're talking about just matching them up, like yeah, okay. I think the only thing that they would be able to say is they shoot better than him.
Yeah.
And maybe handle the turnovers right. Maybe handle the ball better. Even though I think he has a solid handle.
I think.
But other than that.
And I typically would never say this about Russ, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. Or let me not even say coming off the bench, maybe just off the ball, and you know, have him play more of that 2-3 position. But I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah, it's either OKC from what I'm looking at, right? He could go back to Houston.
He could. I know that's been a question with John.
You know
Wall.
what I mean? And yeah, it's not many. Maybe Sacramento, but then you got De'Aaron Fox and things like that, but. What they've been having ain't been working for him anyway.
No,
you know what I mean?
The Kings are where players go just to pat stab, pretty much.
and if he did go to a team like that, I don't think De'Aaron Fox would stay, right? They would keep a De'Aaron Fox. They would literally have to move pieces around. So like you said, it would have to go to one of these teams that just ain't been doing nothing anyway. Mm-hmm. I think the Washington Wizards, that worked out. I think that worked out pretty good.
I agree.
You know what I mean? With him and Bradley Beal.
I agree.
Because Bradley Beal likes to be off of the ball.
And that's why I almost wanted to say Portland with Dame, but I don't think that would go well together at all.
Dame is a superstar for them. Yeah. Even though I haven't really heard much about him this season.
Yeah, he's been hurt and he's been rapping. So that's his priority right now, which is fine. I don't think he wants to be there either.
Right.
In Portland. So but yeah, I think to wrap up the Russell Wilson Lakers point, like we said, the criticism isn't unwarranted. It's just really misplaced, and it's misplaced because it's solely on Russ right now, and It doesn't need to be. I'm not sure if AD is in talks to even come back this season, so they can potentially make a playoff run, whether it's as the 8th seed or a play-in game, whichever it is. But if that does happen, if they're able to make a run and make something miraculous happen, LeBron even said, like, I'll never count me out. So I don't know. I think these next few weeks, next month will tell a lot as far as what is next for the Lakers, for Russ, his time with the organization. A lot is going to unfold within this next month for them, for sure.
Agreed. Okay, so, we talked about, NFL. We talked about some things that's going on in the NBA. Moving over to the WNBA as we're in the off season, right? I guess the big thing right now is Brittney Griner being detained in Russia. And so, we were talking about it earlier, and I think we kind of both send our prayers just to her because the situation is really just super unfortunate. Something so simple, right, is I think it was cartridges of cannabis oil.
Yep.
Or something like that. And a lot of people have vapes, they just kind of have them on there. And so you kind of think about that, and one, to go to jail, to be detained, right? That's already one thing, but to be in a entirely different country where you were there for work, you were playing basketball, your season's over, you're coming back. A war is going on.
You know literal what I mean? War, yeah.
And so, I think like that, and I try to think of what frame of mind that she's in. I know you played overseas for a little bit. So, how do you think she's feeling right now?
I cannot imagine. And like you said, prayers are sent up for her every single day because I genuinely am terrified by what could be happening to her and the state of mind that she could be in and the conditions that she could be in. Because there's a lot of speculation. I think there's a lot going on and a lot of being said right now. Of course, you always have those losers who are talking about, oh, well, why was she trying to travel with drugs and this and that? And
right.
Why would she even have it on her? Here's what I have to say. Brittney Griner is not new to this. Okay, she's been playing overseas. She's been playing in the league for 10 years now. she was making $1 million a season in Russia, number one. So you best believe I'm hightailing it over there too to go make that money, right? And I mean, the day that they lost in the playoffs or the finals, I would, like she's out. And so to know that she was trying to return and that happened at the airport, I'm telling you, it makes me sick to my stomach. And the part that makes me sick is almost like I feel like she knew better. And I feel like I don't know. I don't want to say it was planted on her. I'm not about to like start a conspiracy, but like genuinely, why would she be traveling with something like that when she knows she's traveled to and from the United States from other countries a bunch of times in the Olympics? Like, she knows that you can't travel with THC oil unless you're flying from California, in the US. So that alone really sketches me out. And obviously on top of the fact that Russia is literally at war right now, and
a war they started.
The US is funding the war, like people like to say, sending supplies to Ukraine. It's so hard for me to like scope it, right? Especially when like I've seen tweets about, people think that Russia, they're going to try to start doing this with a lot of overseas players and with a lot of like big name athletes. Brittney Griner was like a trophy to them when they realized like the leverage, right, that they could like hold over the US or, different politicians and the president even, like that's a big deal to me, right? And obviously like players like LeBron and Steph Curry, that would never happen because why would they ever be in Russia?
Right.
Yeah,
because they don't need to.
Exactly. So like it does like trickle down to the fact that the pay gap, the pay wage for the WNBA, why they have to go play overseas to begin with, and we can touch on that in a second. But it's like it seems like the perfect opportunity for Russia. Like it was like too perfect for them to be at war, for Brittney to be traveling back to the US and for her to get arrested at the airport with THC oil that she knows that she cannot have on a plane. It doesn't feel right. Like no part of it feels right. And I just pray for a safe return for her. I really do. I don't know exactly what the process is. I know that they said that she had so much on her that they thought it was the intent to distribute, and that sentence is up to 10 years in prison, Russian prison.
Yep. I couldn't deal. And you want to know the crazy part? Like you say, how does that happen, right? And I just think, I wish they would show pictures of how much she actually had. Yeah. Because, one, it doesn't make sense. Because if you wanted to go get all that stuff, you could just go to LA. You know what I mean? Like, for where it's legal and stuff like that. What's the difference between the Russia THC oil or cannabis oil in America, right? Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. If she wanted to distribute, she could have easily gotten that in the U.S., I think. Yeah. I don't know. Let's say. About this. Right. But she probably could have got it in the U.S. So that's one thing that I'm interested to see. Okay, exactly how much was it? But I was under the impression it wasn't that much. And so I was thinking maybe it was just she had it on her, but she's rushing, right? It's a whole war going on. So she's like, I need to get back to the States as soon as possible. Maybe she just kind of forgot that it was on her or in her luggage. I could see and that. Things like that. Because just out of simple haste of trying to get out of Russia because they just started a war with Ukraine and Putin's lost his mind and just things of that sort. So that's kind of what I'm thinking may have happened. And I'm not going to speculate. I don't know what happened, but just the simple fact that now she's detained. And like you said, it is punishable up to 10 years. And what's concerning about that, right, is that, we don't want to get too political, but it's a war going on, as we said. But there's also 2 other Americans that are detained right now that I don't even think that people know about. And so we have Trevor Reed, and this one has been a big story. I don't even know if you remember, but this was back in 2020. It did make news. I think he had a drunken night, and he got into it with some cops, and so I think they said assault on the officer or something like that. And he was a Marine Corps veteran. I think he was visiting his girlfriend. Like I said, it started with vodka, and he doesn't even remember what happened. but he's been charged and sentenced with 9 years. And so since then, the president and things like that have been trying to get him out. But, right, I think Trump was still the president when that happened. And then now Biden and his family has just been kind of fighting, saying that we need to get him out of there ASAP because his health is kind of like waning. Like he's been coughing up blood, things of that sort. They think he might have tuberculosis. Something fell on him, so he has a broken rib. And he's just kind of lost all hope, where he's like, Mom, Dad, stop trying because the United States is giving up on me, is what he's kind of feeling right now. Because you talk about 2020, it's going to be almost 2 years in July of a 9-year prison sentence where it's like, hey, this may seem a bit harsh, and this is based on maybe what they've said. It's another country, so you don't have like all the details,
right,
and things of that sort. And so, even if he did attack two police officers, I want to know details like, okay, what injuries did they sustain or something like that? Because 9 years is kind of crazy.
It is.
So that's one of our Americans that's there, and that's a really sad story. I was reading the article, and it's just, I just can't imagine being in another country, being in jail, but also being in jail in another country.
Right.
And then we have another Marine veteran, Paul Whelan, and he was sentenced to 16 years in a Russian prison on espionage charges. And this was in 2020 as well. And he's basically, his argument's like, hey, I was framed, and I think he's trying to appeal that now. But it's just like, okay, now we have 3 Americans, and our ambassadors and politicians are trying to do what they can, at least, right? They're dealing with, we impose all these sanctions on Russia. So we're basically cutting off a good portion of their economic supply, but we're also asking them, hey, can we get our people back? And so I just send all my prayers out to all of those people, right? Those Americans that are in Russian prisons, and hopefully we can kind of work something out to kind of like get them back, because obviously Brittney Griner is a famous figure. She's a celebrity, and her life matters. Their lives matter too, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about just being in other countries. So I don't know. I'm going to keep looking to see what kind of happens with that. But
right.
Like you said, the only thing we can do is just kind of like pray. And hopefully Russia doesn't use them as just kind of like a piece, right, to get what they want.
That's the hard part, is even the thought of being a piece to a bigger puzzle, a bigger political agenda.
Much larger than you would ever expect.
It's terrifying. Like your life is literally a piece, a pawn to, okay, what can we do? What can we get? What can we gain? What can we take from them? Meanwhile, I'm sitting here anxious as I don't know what, like you said, in prison. And like, I stand on the fact that prison is my biggest fear, and I will, I would make it. I'm telling you, I would not make it. So prison in another country, I can't imagine.
Right.
And so prayers to all 3 of them, all 3 of the individuals that you named. But yeah, I've seen, it's been news every day, of course, since it's happened, since we found out. The fact that we didn't find out about it until after she had already been detained for 3 weeks.
Crazy.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Yep. So yeah, man, the stuff is getting crazier by the day, I think. People don't expect things like that to happen. But I guess that's why you just kind of just stay 2 steps ahead. Some stuff just happens, though, and you have no control over it. And I think that's definitely kind of one of those cases here. Definitely. So prayers out to Brittney Griner, Trevor Reed, and Paul Whelan, and, hopefully we can get you guys back home. So, I think moving on, right, to maybe just a lighter topic, still kind of crazy, like within the WNBA. History has kind of been made. The Las Vegas Aces have hired Becky Hammon, who is one of the greatest WNBA players who have ever played, on a $1 million a year salary. And so I think for the league, I think that's the highest the league has ever paid a coach. Obviously, right, if you don't know who Becky Hammon is, some of her accolades for coaching, right, is that she's been over on the NBA side under Greg Popovich with the San Antonio Spurs. She's coached some of the summer league teams, right, and things of that sort. And so I think as far as like bringing that back to the league, I was actually kind of surprised, because I thought Becky Hammon may have had her eyes set on being a head coach in the NBA. So when I saw her come over to the WNBA, I was a little bit surprised, but I think it's great, right? Because being able to kind of retain talent in a sense where she was a part of the league where she played in, and now that she's coaching is huge. And not only that, she's gotten that NBA experience, worked with some of the best players in the NBA, and it's like now we're bringing that back. And so as far as from a publicity standpoint, that in and of itself is like huge. And so I think the Las Vegas Aces have also been, a team that people have talked about every single year, right? Because with Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Liz Cambage at one point, they've had huge players that have kind of played for the team. And some interesting coaches, too, because I think Bill Laimbeer was once a coach for the Las Vegas Aces as well. So how do you kind of see Becky Hammon settling into the league as a coach?
I think she's going to do great. I mean, I think, of course, expectations are high. Not just for me, but from across the sports world. People are expecting a lot because of her resume, playing and coaching. I've always looked up to Becky Hammon back before they were the Aces, when they were the Stars in San Antonio. Right. And I think that's really a full circle moment, right? Like, she played for them when they were the Stars. Obviously they moved to Las Vegas. Now she's their head coach. She had her jersey retired for them. And I will say, I wish that it's kind of like weird timing with the comments that Liz Cambage made about Becky Hammon being paid so much, and then her leaving the Aces now for the Sparks. But questionable, controversial comments, right, about her salary, about her being paid so much when the players aren't paid as much. What I have to say about that is, it takes time. And the NBA, obviously now guys are signing $150 million contracts, supermax deals, but the NBA has been around for so long.
Right.
And they obviously, the revenue that they generate is insane compared to the WNBA, which is the league has only been around for not even 30 years yet. So I think it'll get there. I really do. I think in the next 10 years, we're going to look up and there are going to be 3 more organizations and, a different playoff format and more games throughout a longer season, right? Bigger contracts because of more revenue, more TV time, more deals.
Nike.
Yeah.
You see Nike's backing them. That's huge.
Exactly. So it takes time. And I think with Liz Cambage, I completely understand because she's a great player. Like, right. Easily my favorite player in the W right now. However, you got to be realistic and you got to look at, it's not the league per se. It's the money. The money isn't there for them to pay Liz Cambage maybe the $4 or $5 million a year that she's worth. And you look at, like we said, the length of the WNBA season is not long enough to
generate.
No, it's not. They play literally for the summer and that's it. Their first game is like May or June, somewhere around that time, and then they're done in September.
Right.
It's quick. It's really quick compared to the NBA season, who it feels like it's all year long, from preseason games all the way to the NBA finals. And so I do think that it's going to continue to grow. The league has grown from what I remember as a child having a jersey from the Sparks to now. Exactly. It's grown immensely. I follow a lot of WNBA people who cover the league, and it's constant tweets about viewership going up and the deals that they're able to get on ESPN, ABC, those primetime slots that sometimes you look up and there's a WNBA game on, but then there's they're playing an old NASCAR race, Yeah. So a lot of those things aren't happening anymore because it's like we said, it's starting to change. They're starting to gain more viewership. And so I kind of went off on a tangent when you asked me a specific question. However, I do think Becky Hammon will do well. I, of course, wish her all the best success. I hope she goes and wins the championship her first season. I'm going to say that because
she got the team.
She definitely does.
They could do it. That's for sure. So no, I completely agree. Right. But going back to the Liz Cambage comments, right? And I have the tweet pulled up here, but what she said, yes, the WNBA where a head coach can get paid 4 times the highest paid player's supermax contract. LMAO, and y'all think I'm going to spend another season upgrading my seat on a flight to get to games out of my own pocket. And so breaking down that tweet a little bit, right? She's exactly right. The Supermax is $250. And you're exactly right, though, too, about it does take time, right? The NBA's been around for, 75 years? I think they just had the 75th anniversary.
Yes.
And the WNBA is not even 30 years old. So that's something that they kind of have to look at. Like, there's nothing wrong with fighting for what you think is right. Yeah. And you should continue to fight, because maybe you can get the WNBA at a place in 45 years as opposed to where it took the NBA maybe 75 or something like that.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
Continue to fight, because it is a much bigger fight than just the WNBA versus the NBA and the pay gaps and stuff like that, because we're dealing with these pay gaps just outside of sports in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand that. But her comment about the upgrading her seat on a flight, right? For those of you that don't know, Liz Cambage is like, what, 6'9"?
6'8".
6'8".
And
she's
bad.
a very tall woman, right? Mm-hmm. And so with the WNBA, they actually don't charter flights. And I think it's simply because of just the cost and things of that sort. But imagine you come from being a student athlete at a college, and I've never been on a commercial flight until I think my grad transfer year at Fresno. And it was simply because we had to. But other than that, I don't remember being on many commercial flights. Everything was just kind of chartered where it's just your team and things like that. So imagine being a student athlete where every single flight is chartered, to now you go to the next level where you think, oh, we get even more perks, and everything's just going to be so much better. And now you're back on commercial, and not only are you on commercial, you're on economy. You're in the basic cabin. You're not even in first class. And so that's what Liz Cambage is getting at, because since they're doing these commercial flights, she's 6'8", and you're expecting her to squeeze in basic economy, and she can't even let her legs out, and she has to go and spend her own money to upgrade her seat as a professional basketball player. That's insane.
Yeah.
And I can understand the frustrations of that. Maybe it was bad timing, right? Because I felt like she should have been celebrating Becky Hammon more than using Becky Hammon's moment to kind of fight another topic, right?
Right.
So that's my only criticism, but I don't see a problem with it, right? And then we talked about earlier the New York Liberty, where you got these general managers, right, that are coming in. They have a lot of money. They're coming into the league, and they're trying to put their money up to give their players the best experience. The New York Liberty general manager, paid for a chartered flight so that his team could have a chartered flight, and I think it was in the playoffs.
He did. It was the whole season. They did
the whole season.
They did it for the whole season, yeah. And coincidentally, he's the same owner for the Nets. And so you think about it, obviously he has the money.
Right.
Other owners don't. That's not a thing.
Yep.
And for all other WNBA teams, right? And so there are other owners who simply can't afford to charter flights all season. Mm-hmm. And so they look at it as like a recruiting tactic of like, oh, well, if you come to the New York Liberty, look, you'll be able to charter a flight all season. Mm-hmm. Versus if you go play for the Washington Mystics, yeah, you're going to be in the basic cabin.
Right.
And so that is why they, like you said, they find them. I think that's ridiculous. Absolutely.
It is. Because I'm quite sure, right, if you even look at the NBA, they're probably all rich if we're talking about the general managers. But there probably is certain perks, right? I think that the Los Angeles Lakers have an advantage every single year.
Yeah. Simply
because they're in LA.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to go and play in LA? You know what I mean? So I completely agree with you. If he has the money to do it, I think that's just setting the bar. If we're not allowing him to do that and we're fining him for putting his own money behind that, we can't really fault him for that. You know what I mean? Because the way that I look at it is, okay, you're bringing big money into the league. People may see him and see him having success, right? Maybe make a little bit of money. And maybe other general managers from the NBA or just people with money want to put their money up behind these teams too, to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they should, fine him or tell him, no, you can't do that, because how do we grow as a league, right? If we're not allowed, someone has to do it somewhere.
Yes.
And if that gives the New York Liberty an advantage, then that forces the WNBA to be like, okay, we got to figure out how to even the playing field, so everyone is not just going to New York.
Yes.
But if we say no, you can't do it, then it's easy for them to just sit on their butts, like, okay, yeah,
it's going to be the same that it's always been.
Exactly.
And that's why it's crazy that you say the word grow, because Naomi Osaka came out and she made a tweet once they did come out and say that they were fining the New York Liberty $500,000. It started out at $1 million and then they cut it in half to $500,000 for chartering flights for the whole season. The owner of the New York Liberty and the Brooklyn Nets came out and was like, I have a plan to get the entire WNBA, every single team in the WNBA chartered flights for the whole season. The WNBA didn't want to do it. And that's why Naomi Osaka came out and was like, do y'all want to grow or not? Do y'all want change or not? Because otherwise, as a WNBA player, you feel like just a rinky-dink, Rudy-Poo athlete, you know?
Yeah, why would someone want to go play for the WNBA if the pay is shit, right? And two, you don't even get treated like a professional athlete.
When there's a chance that you could be. Like, he had a plan. He presented them with a plan.
Why did they shut it down?
I'm not going to speak on it because I'm not sure.
Okay.
But we're definitely going to look it up and talk about it because it's out there that he had the plan. And because it wasn't just for the New York Liberty. That was the thing. That was the whole point, was that he came out and was like, I have a plan for everyone. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And he was like, well, if y'all not going to take my plan for everyone, I'm definitely going to take care of mine. And had them charter their flights for the whole season. And so, like Naomi Osaka said, it's like, do you want growth or do you want to hold these phenomenal athletes, right? That this is supposed to be the greatest league in the world.
In women's sports, right?
You don't hold it up there when you're holding these players back, and you won't even allow them the perks of being a professional athlete.
Exactly.
They can't even hop on a PJ, a charter, you know, when in college basketball you can't. That doesn't make sense. So,
well, you know, college basketball, they have like Title IX, so they have to. But at the same point in time, it's like, I didn't know he came out with a whole plan, so I made those comments without even knowing that he said that.
Yeah.
But it's just about growth. Even if he was only saying, hey, it's for the New York Liberty, he shouldn't get fined for that, simply because that's where we're trying to be at a place where all of the teams have chartered flights. Like, there's no way these women should be on bus rides during the playoffs
for 5+ hours.
There's just no way. And then you're having to get back and forth and things like that. It doesn't make any sense. And so at least start with saying, okay, you know, maybe we don't want to say the whole season for whatever reason, but maybe the playoffs at least, you know, we start there. All flights are chartered, right? Gives incentive for people who want to go to playoffs and know that they're going to be taken care of. And then we can figure out a way to flesh this out across the whole season and across all teams. But the fact that they turned that down, I'm going to look at that. That's crazy. Yeah. That don't make no sense.
And I just can't imagine a player like Cam Beige, Candace Parker. Those are literally like huge names in the sports world, not just in the WNBA, in the sports world, huge names that are walking through the airport, having to cancel flights, having to sit in the airport overnight, like you said, bus for 12+ hours. There's no possible way. Then when you have a teammate, like you said, who's able to afford it, right? They have other sponsorship deals and things like that where
maybe someone the same height as Liz Cambage that doesn't have the stature that she has can't. That's crazy.
And they have to sit there with their knees crying the whole 4-hour flight. That is extremely unfortunate. And so that's definitely something that I think the WNBA has to look into. Miss Kathy, we gotta talk about it within the next few years, because like you said, if you want this growth and you call yourself the best league for women's sports in the world, we gotta show it. Yeah, definitely have to show it.
And you gotta listen to your big time players, right? Regardless of what you think about Liz Cambage, a lot of people think she complains a lot and things like that.
Love her.
She's one of the top players in the league. So if she's saying something, if LeBron came out against the NBA, I guarantee you Adam Silver's gonna call him that night, like, what can we do? You know, especially if he's saying, I'm not playing next year because of something that the NBA did, like she did.
Yeah.
Silver would be on the phone with him. They'd have an all hands on deck meeting, like, we need to figure it out. Because imagine how much money LeBron brings into the league off his name alone.
Exactly.
Not saying that they're just going to completely fall off, because that wouldn't happen, but he brings a lot of money in. LeBron brings his money in. Then you have LeBron and the Lakers.
Right. That
brings even more money in. And so they definitely need to take their top players seriously. And, you know, if there is a plan for it and someone's coming to you with a solution, you can't just say no to it. You know, really kind of look into it and see if it's sustainable. Like, if it's not sustainable, okay, maybe I can understand. But I'm quite sure a portion of it is, like I said, maybe just for the playoffs. So
definitely.
But we'll see. I definitely think they just need to pay attention to that, right? Because the league is growing rapidly, and rightfully so. So now it's just making sure you just take those strategic pieces, right, to put everything together, to make sure that your players are proud of the league, you know what I mean, to make sure that your players aren't having to go overseas and possibly end up in a situation like Brittney Griner, right?
Yeah.
And things of, or just simply having to take on other jobs, right? I know some players are probably working maybe a regular job during the summers, or sorry, outside of the league season or whatever. So, but I'm excited though to see the growth and kind of what's happening, because it looks like people are finally like ready to put their money kind of behind it. So that's always promising.
Yeah, definitely big for the league.
All right, so we've talked about several things throughout this whole thing, and I really just wanted to end with March Madness, obviously. So I feel like this is everyone's like favorite time of the year, especially if you're a college basketball fan.
Yep.
And we've seen some really good games, right, with just the conference tournaments and things of that sort. So I guess, what does March Madness mean to you? Like, do you have any memories of watching games or something like that you can remember that, you kind of want to share?
Well, I played it in once.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know if I'll say played. I'll say I was there. But that is a memory that I'll definitely hold close forever.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to Notre Dame, playing Georgia, beating them,
Mm-hmm.
playing Notre Dame in the next round. Took an L, but it's cool,
Mm-hmm.
That was a big moment. That's something that I'll definitely cherish. I think so much of March used to be directed at a lot of men's basketball, college men's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And so now this is the first year that they have called women's March Madness, because we've always called it that, I think.
Right, yeah.
But it was like officially called the NCAA tournament.
Which I never noticed that.
Yeah, which is
Until
crazy.
They made an article about it.
Yeah, and then of course last year, with the bubble format, there was so much talk, so much news about the discrepancies with the men's side, their swag bags and their food and their workout setup versus the women's, which was literally like one rack of weights, a yoga mat,
What you gonna do with that?
and a kettlebell, a 10-pound kettlebell. What am I about to do with this? So,
and 10 pounds at that, like,
come on now.
we at least need 25.
I got to be able to swing it or something. What am I doing with 10 pounds? So I think this year, they'll be a lot more intentional about that because of the press that they got last year, which is kind of sad, but we know that kind of has to happen for something to happen. It has to be talked about. And so I think that'll be a good thing to look out for this year, seeing how they kind of close that gap with, like we said, things that maybe don't matter in the grand scheme, those swag bags and things like that, but just the feeling of knowing, like, say if I have a boyfriend who's playing in the tournament and he's on FaceTime showing me, oh, look at this towel, this water bottle, all this stuff we got, and I'm like, dang, I got a headband, but it's cool, like, so I think that'll be something to look forward to. Like we said, just calling it March Madness. I think filling out brackets. I think the games, so many big time names, coaches, women's coaches, black coaches. I think there's just so much that I have my eye on, at least this year, and very intentional, that I did not used to really pay attention to, right? But I'm rooting for the black coaches. If it's like a matchup and I might not be very familiar with these two teams, I'm like, I'm going with the black lady. Like, exactly. So just that side of it. But on the men's side, I'm really excited to see who's going to be the next top dog, so to speak. Of course, with Coach K retiring. I think on the men's side, it hasn't really been a sure thing.
It hasn't.
In the past few years. Really on the women's side either. I mean, of course, it used to be UConn for years. And now South Carolina is in the mix. Notre Dame is in the mix. There are a lot of different schools who are... It could be anybody's game. Arizona, Stanford, a lot of those schools who used to lose in the Sweet 16, Elite 8 every single year, they're making those Final Four runs. And so I'm so excited. I can't wait. I can't wait for Selection Sunday tonight.
Right.
Fill out the brackets, watch those games, but crazy buzzer beaters, all of that. I'm so excited.
That's the part that I'm just kind of like, every March, I don't know what it is, but it seems like throughout the whole season, we get buzzer beaters and things like that. But as soon as March 1st hits, or even some tournaments happen at the end of February, right? It's like the buzzer beaters start coming in groves.
Yeah.
Where you almost like kind of expect it in a sense. Like, oh my God, it's a close game. It's less than 10 seconds left. I know they're about to hit this because it's March. I don't know what.
It's the basketball gods.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what the gods are on in March, but like it's like a whole other level where it's like, it's March. And that's the only thing that you can say. Like, they hit shots to you like, well, it is March.
Yeah, that's literally what you say.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited for those types of games. You know, you rarely see too many blowouts and things like that. I love watching at least like the first 4 games with the teams that aren't in the round of 64.
Yep.
But I think on the men's side, I don't know if they do it on the women's side, but they have those teams, and those games are some of the hardest played games because these guys, you know, you don't hear about them much throughout the season. And or maybe you do, right? But they're playing their hearts out, and every single game you're gonna see that, and that's something I can respect, right, about just college basketball in general, is that I've never watched a March Madness game and said, wow, this team didn't come to play hard, right?
Right.
It seems like both teams, regardless of who you're watching, is playing like the hardest that you would ever see kind of kids play. Yeah. So I think it has a lot to do with they know the publicity that comes with it, right? All the games, you get one app and all of the games are there, and just like all of that energy, right? No matter where you are in the country, I feel like you could be working, you know, you could be working out. I don't know, you could be doing whatever, but everyone's tuning into March Madness, and that's like just some of the coolest stuff ever. So
I agree. Even if you're not a basketball fan, literally everybody's watching basketball in March. And to a point where you said about like the buzzer beaters and the blowout wins, I feel like, you know, it's rare. It is extremely rare almost to see a blowout win in March, unless, you know, it's like that first round, first seed versus that 16 seed. Yep. But even then, you know, it's almost always a different of just like talent level versus like willing to win or wanting to win. You know, both teams are scrappy. Both teams want to win. It's just, you know, obviously one team ends up being better than the other. But then you get those upset wins, which I can't wait to see. I love the upsets. I love them. So yeah, I think that's like the epitome of March. That's like, if that doesn't get you excited, there's something wrong with you. I don't know what it is, but
exactly. And I can't. The thing that's hard about this year on both sides, like you said, is I can't sit here and say who I think is going to win. No. I'm going to fill out my brackets, and I'll kind of compare teams as I kind of see them go along, but there's no sure winner, I think, on either side. Nope. Where even just the past 2 weeks, I think a lot of the top 10 teams, especially on the men's side, have went down. Yep. Even on the women's side. Yep. You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like, dang, you guys are dropping games this late in the season. Right. You usually don't like to see that. Yeah. And so I think those teams, right, those top 10 teams and things like that have lost, or top 6 teams that have lost, what do you think it was probably a good thing that they lost in the conference tournament rather than dropping one in the tournament? Because sometimes I think, right, once you kind of get humbled, it's like a reality check, especially in the conference tournament. It's like, oh, we can't be doing that, you know. Yeah. I don't know what we did, but we need to kind of get it together. So do you think that helps sometimes when they lose earlier rather than later? Definitely. I think, like you said, like that's like a humbling moment, and it's like that we needed that one. And coaches will tell them the same thing. I can imagine the post-game talks are like, well, I'm glad y'all got it out now, because you know, in the tournament you going home. And that's it. Yeah, literally. So yeah, I think it's definitely better to drop those games now. However, you know, this is when you're supposed to be playing your best basketball. Yep. So dropping that game is like, ugh, you know, it's. But a lot of times, that is when a lot of players get to that point of like, this one don't really matter. Like, or you know, they kind of play down to their competition. We've seen that happen a lot, where teams drop games that they shouldn't even be close with, but it's because that team wants it and they're fighting for a spot in the tournament when your spot is already solidified. Exactly. So, yeah. That's what I'd say. And we see that, I would say, like, if I had to retract a little bit, we see that in the like Power 5 conference tournaments, because those other guys, right, that are out there playing, they're not dropping games or trying to drop games. Like, those are some of the most competitive games that I'm usually seeing, because it's really unfortunate, right? Because if they don't win their conference tournament, they know their season is done. Yep. They could have won 20-plus games. You know what I mean? They could have even had some top 25 wins or something like that. But a lot of times, if you come from some of those smaller conferences, if you don't win your conference tournament, you're done. And that's like a whole other topic, right? And we can go into all types of detail into it, but that's just kind of like the nature of the beast. And so I really like watching those conference tournaments too, because you really just kind of see the emotion, the raw emotion, and you know how bad these kids like really want to have that moment, and things of that sort. So I think that just encompasses March altogether. I'm not even I don't have a prediction, to be honest. I'm just excited to watch some basketball, see some buzzer beaters and all of that good stuff. So it's on us. It's time.
It is. It definitely is. Am I gonna make a prediction? I'm trying to think. On the men's side, I'm gonna go with Gonzaga because of Drew Timme. Drew Timme, I love you. His footwork is absolutely incredible, insane. Like, can't even wrap my mind around it half the time. There's so many videos on my phone where I'm watching it 10 times. Like, okay, I'm gonna practice that move tomorrow because that was ridiculous. His feet are crazy. I'm going literally based off him, Gonzaga. Okay. On the men's side. On the women's side, you know, I'm gonna root for Dawn. I'm gonna go South Carolina this year.
That's a good pick. That's probably who I would have chose.
Yeah,
and because they lost. So.
Right. Yeah, they lost it last year. Even though Stanford, their win was amazing last year over Arizona. But yeah, definitely I'm going South Carolina. I'm going Gonzaga. I said it. It's stamped. We gonna remember this. I'm gonna tweet it out. I'm gonna post it. All that. There it is.
All right. All right, well, there you have it, folks. This wraps up this episode of Unfinished Business. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and, you know, staying up with us, right? We've been missing in action for a little bit, but we bike.
Okay.
We're excited. If you made it this far, once again, like, comment, subscribe. We got a lot of good things coming. Danny, do you have any closing words?
I got a shameless plug right here.
Okay.
Danielle Williams Skills Training, you know, holla at me. If you're ready to get your basketball skills right, that's from the kiddos all the way on up. You know? If you a pro and you want to come get it in, let's do it. We got it.
Let's get it. Thanks you guys so much. You'll see us next time on Unfinished Business. We out. Peace.